multifaceted. The endurance and the athletic aspect of it is one small portion. But now let's talk about the other things like recovery, nutrition, strength, like all these other components, like swimming and running for Swimrun is one part of it.
Welcome to the Low Tide Boys, a Swimrun podcast. I'm Chip.
And I'm Chris, and this is episode 206 of the show. We got a great one for everyone this week. Joining us to talk through what the ultimate swimrun training camp looks like is Purple Patch Coach, frequent guest of the show, and our friend, Coach John Stevens. Mm-hmm. We covered a ton of ground in this one, and we can't wait to share it with all of you. By the way, 206 is a number that's burned in my mind because that was the room in my high school that was the detention room. Of which I spent...
You were a high frequenter of 206?
Frequent flyer. frequent flyer of room 206. So
okay.
That number just keeps following me around. Now onto the show.
Now it is here today. But first, training update. Well, we're still not training, but we're also not training.
Yeah.
You get it, right?
Yeah.
I think everyone's
doing
kind
stuff.
of... We're doing something.
Yeah.
But a lot less structure, more soul-filling, fun, some meetups, all sorts of goodness like that. Busting out the Peloton bike. And then you also not feeling so bad if you get down with the sickness and you got to take a couple days off, speaking from my experience this week.
Yeah, you were out of commission there.
When it's like a weeknight and you hear one of your kids in your room and they just have the cough and you're like, just start the countdown timer. It's happening. It's
a matter of time. And if you're like a forensic listener, we recorded this interview with John as you were getting sick.
Oh, yes, you could hear.
So you might even pick up on that.
Some sniffles maybe.
But the time of release,
congestion.
We're past it. So
we're at a better place here now.
The human body is an amazing thing.
It is. Just Dayquil to the face. Now, for this week's shout-outs.
Yeah, so this week we're shouting out our recent Bay Area visitors. Liz, one half of Team at Batman's Parents, and Jarett, one half of Team MamaaBoyz. They happened to be in town, so we were almost coordinating different meetups, and we just put them all together. So it was great to hang out and do a little city run.
Yeah, jog it out in the city.
Yeah, early morning. Barcadero action.
It's a fool for the city. Now... for this week's Feats of Endurance.
Go on.
I'm still looped up on that Dayquil. Feats of Endurance this week's winner is Steve Henn. He posted a sporty 30K trail run over the weekend that included some, innocent trespassing and aptly titled "Ticket Good for One Ride Only," a strong contender for Stava Title of the Year.
So a little bit of footnote on this. In his Strava title, he also had a little thing. He's like, I went for a run. This trail looked like it was handmade, and sure enough, it was through someone's backyard. He wasn't super happy, but I finished the loop. So, yeah.
The guy saw him, you got ID'd?
Yeah.
Now, if that was in the one water race, he would have got, there was some, he would have got scolded.
Issues.
He would have got scolded on that. Now, you might be saying, where did you hear about Steve Henn's run? Well, he's in the Low Tide Boys Strava Club now. 600 members strong.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Mind you. And I just did this is a very light level of research, but I'm going to put it out there, the largest swimrun club on Strava. So head to Strava, search Low Tide Boys, join in the fun as people train for all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, from
around the world. Lots of stuff. Lots of different representation. I love to see it there. Now for a little bit of show business. Well, you've heard us preaching about spreading the word about swimrun.com's second annual awards. They're now open. Voting has commenced. The nominations are in. Go vote. Have your voice be heard for the best swim run in Portugal, your favorite swim run socks, and other cool categories.
Yeah. Pool buoys is in there, obviously.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Did the Keel Mega?
So. I think the Mega came out.
A little too late.
Yeah, Mega came out.
Yeah, they didn't align that with the award seasons. Now, just in case you're wondering where to go, you're going to head to swimrun.com, and right at the tip top of the page, you'll see second annual awards there. Yours truly, Chris and Chip, the Low Tide Boys, us, our judges, So we're going to get our judging on. There's the People's Choice Awards, and then there's the Judges Awards. So there's a great panel of judges here beyond us, but we're excited to see what everyone picks for all the different categories there. So again, head on over to swimrun.com. Now, for this week's interview with frequent guest, Coach John Stevens, about how to construct and all about the ultimate swim run training camp.
Yeah, it was really great to get John back on the show. It'd been a couple months, Gotta keep his presence felt.
He might be one of the top.
I think him and Helen. At some point I checked, and it was John and Helen.
We don't have if somebody can maybe make a database for us or something, that would be great. Thanks.
Yeah, I think you just volunteered yourself. In this conversation, we broke down the difference between, a camp and a training weekend, the key elements for maximizing the training opportunity, shared what a swimrun camp could look like, and so much more. I mean, we really got into the weeds on this one, and we were here for it. I mean, it got super tactical. It was like, hey, here's the benefit of doing this. Here's what you want to think about. It was
extremely
it was
valuable.
Very comprehensive.
Very comprehensive, and this is I think an itch that we've been wanting to scratch ourselves, and this is certainly something that you and I have thrown around. Like, oh man, it'd be so cool to do a training camp in Lake Tahoe or this and that. Also, I would say a frequent listener question that we get as well. So, John, he's with Purple Patch Fitness. They have been doing camps, triathlon multi-sport camps for many, many years. So he has a wealth of experience with this. So he was really sharing all that there, and the value that they get from
if you're listening to the show and then the show disappears, is because we got a cease and desist from Purple Patch Fitness for sharing their IP.
You guys are using John too much. tapping the knowledge bank too much on that. But really valuable insights, and I like the approach on the different ways. Like, what are you trying to get out of the camp? There's different ways to place it in your training, where to go, things to do, how to construct it, and then sort of the whole knowledge base of it there. So a really, really cool episode.
So good, so good. Yeah, and this was, as you alluded to, Chipper, was a recommendation from a listener. So keep those recommendations coming on the content that you want to learn about.
Yeah. Well, without any further ado, let's get into it. The Ultimate Swim Run Training Camp with Coach John Stevens. All
right, so here to share his wisdom, deep wisdom on how to plan the Ultimate Training Weekend is Coach at Purple Patch Fitness, frequent guest of the show, and our friend, John Stevens. Welcome back to the show.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Yeah, happy to be back. Always a good time chatting with you about all things swim run.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think at this time, fifth
at
time?
least fifth or sixth.
I don't know. There's this is like if you're first time listening to John Stevens on the show, prepare to get your mind blown multiple times. We brought you on, John, because we've gotten some questions from listeners. Oh, we want to do like a swim run adventure training weekend type thing, and we know that Purple Patch does camps and these types of activities. So I guess first question for you is, why are training weekends and sort of these triathlon or intensive short period of time camps a thing?
I think there's a couple different things that come to mind when you talk about the importance of these weekends. And I think first and foremost is the training aspect to it, right? It's a huge boost in your in fitness, or at least the opportunity is there for it, where you're going to get in a lot of really kind of structured, pointed training in a short amount of time and have kind of a big fitness boost around that. The other side of it too is the camaraderie aspect and training with other people. It's often, I'll talk first on, Purple Patch. It's remote coaching, so we don't get to see these athletes very often. So, when you get them together and you're able to train with them, it's just an opportunity for people to get to know each other, learn from the coaches and learn from each other. And then even in the swim run community, I feel like I know so many people in swim run who I've never met. And so it's this opportunity to get together with all these people. As you guys know, you show up to these events and I'm sure people feel like you're their best friends because they listen to you every week, but you've never met them. So it's these opportunities, much like a race, to get together and have just these weekends with like-minded people where you can go out, adventure, learn, gain fitness, and have fun.
Okay, that's good. So this is the camp aspect, and I think this is something that Chris and I have thrown around like, oh, this seems so great. Like, when you think about where to sort of within your calendar year or your training cycles, where do you like to kind of place these camps to maximize the impact of the fitness boost that you're getting?
Yeah, great question. And I think there's few different ways to look at this as well. One of the things we do at Purple Patch, and they've been doing it for years, is we do a Kona camp in January. We're at the beginning of the year, and that's kind of just an opportunity to kind of just let's layer on some fitness early, and kind of build up a little bit and be ready to go and kind of kickstart your season that way. And you're building this base of fitness that then you can then carry forward into the rest of your training going into the season. Another thought too, and we do camps later in the spring, is the idea of you've already built the fitness, you've kind of have that base, if you will, and now you're able to go do a really kind of big intensive weekend just to kind of put it on the tip of the mountain there, just kind of add that extra little benefit. You're already in shape. You could push a little bit harder. You can do a little bit more in that weekend. You obviously want to come off of that with some recovery and allow your body to adapt and adjust to all of it. But then kind of at the kickstart of race season where you're ready to go and you kind of have the time on your feet and those big miles and those big hours in, and now those races don't seem as daunting, as particularly with some of these longer swim run races when they come up. So two different ways. I think, early in the season, there's a lot of gains and benefits from that. Kind of towards the beginning of your race season, also a really great opportunity just to kind of, capitalize on some training and some fitness that you've already laid down in the first part of the year.
Let me ask you a follow-up question on, obviously doing in January, that sounds awesome. Also vacation if you're in, for example, in Maine, going to Hawaii seems very nice around that time of year.
It's rough. Yeah.
For example.
But when you're doing it sort of in, maybe at the start of your season, to me, it seems like, well, that's a great way to kind of put like a line in the sand in terms of, okay, well, what does race pace actually look like? In Swimrun in particular, the courses are so challenging that, you might be able to run 7-minute miles on the roads, but your sort of overall swim run time, if you can hover around 10 minutes, that's usually pretty good. If you're below that, you're pretty elite. And if you're around 12, 13, I guess that would be like more sort of your standard overall pace. But kind of knowing that is really helpful. So how do you structure sort of the early season or before race season camp or training weekend in order to kind of get a good sense of where you're stacking up fitness wise?
Yeah, I think an early season race, if we're talking January, kind of when you're just starting to ramp up your training, that camp's going to look different than a camp when you're kind of going into race season, obviously. I think, when you're doing it early in the season, like January, it's going to be a lot of low stress miles. You're thinking more volume, not necessarily intensity, and just that opportunity to bring things up a little bit. And so, a lot of what you're doing that time is probably going to be, easier running, some easier swimming. Swimming, I think you have that component to add a little bit more intensity to it, more frequently than running. But if you're doing something in January, it's more just kind of building a little bit of volume up and building on top of that. Whereas if you're talking about a camp in the beginning of race season, that's where you probably are trying to dial in on paces a little bit. You're hitting some more race type intensity, and you would do something where, you'd have some longer days, some volume days, obviously a lot of educational components can be mixed into all of these regardless of the time of year. But if you're looking to dial in on pacing a little bit, that's something, a camp that's maybe at the beginning of race season. Now, if you're doing a camp in January, I think it maybe is an opportunity to see kind of where your baseline is and say, all right, this is where I'm at. It's a starting point. Like you said, it's a line in the sand, and it's an opportunity to grow from. Whereas if you're doing it before race season, it's more of that opportunity to be like, okay, where are our race paces? What are we capable of holding? Where's our threshold on this? And what's it going to feel like to push that pace a little bit? And you're starting to dial it in at that point. So, you're going to have different types of training at different types of the season, when you're training, and same goes for the camps. If the camp's at a different point in the season, it's going to be a different type of training.
Yeah, I really like that. So I guess if you and your training group or some people that you want to go on or set off on this camp, like kind of get aligned on, hey, are we trying to set a really strong foundation for the season and we're going to do it earlier in the season before the races, or are we looking to really sharpen the tip of that spear and we're going to do it closer to the race piece there? So that's really good there. Now, when you think about location, is there any consideration around that? Like, do you want to try to be traveling for a long time to get there, or do you want to try to find somewhere local? Or I guess it depends on the group as well, but is there any consideration around location, maybe heat or elevation? I know people are probably thinking about both of those aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it depends on what your goals are for the season. If it were me and I was planning a training weekend, and it depends on the group and who you're with, but ultimately I would look at it and be like, where are we racing this year? What are going to be our challenges? And you kind of want to start addressing what those challenges are going to be early and getting used to it. For myself, for example, if I'm in Maine, and obviously if we're doing a January camp and we're getting the hell out of here and we're going somewhere warm, that adds its own challenges of, heat and humidity. We're just not going to be used to it. But the idea with it, I think back to, you talk about challenging races like Orcas or Catalina when we had it, years ago. There was that idea of you just can't train for that type of terrain around here in Maine. It's just not available. So the idea for me would be let's hit the mountains. Let's go somewhere where we can get some elevation and just kind of get comfortable being uncomfortable climbing and descending and going through that. And so that would be my take on it. But again, you kind of hit on something too earlier where it's the group. Who are you going with? What does everyone want to get out of this? And, is it going to be more of a fun training weekend? Is it going to be more of a challenging training weekend? Is it going to be a training weekend with friends? Are you going to a camp with coaches? And I think, who's leading it and kind of making those decisions. I think a lot goes into a planning around this, but in terms of location, it kind of probably for me would come down to what is going to help me improve? How am I going to get better? And okay, if I'm going to go race, some really mountainous, hilly terrain, I'm going to go where that exists and try to find that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So
Lake Tahoe, Chris, is what I heard.
Exactly. No, I actually remember doing that back in the day when I was training for Ironman. Lake Tahoe, went up there for a training weekend just to kind of like hang out on the course at altitude and just kind of get a sense of what it was like. Which is obviously
super common.
Super helpful.
Look at Lake Placid in the months leading up to the Ironman Placid. Every weekend there's some sort of group out there kind of just getting used to the course and getting used to what's there. And it's like Herbert doing those training weekends at Swimrun, North Carolina. Get used to the course and get to understand it a little bit. Yeah,
and that one in particular is one where hanging out on that course super helpful because it's so different from any other swim run. Yeah. But so let's pick a race that's super popular in the States, one that you are intimately familiar with, Casco Bay, right? If Chipper and I wanted to set up a training weekend for that, and let's say the race this year, I think it's in August. Let's say we wanted to do that in June, and we have to stay to the Bay Area you're familiar with. So we're just going to use our trails, our bodies of water. And let's say it's like 3 days, we want to hit it. We want to do course prep for this. Can you walk us through what that would look like? Or what you think we should do?
From a session perspective?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah. So like basically like Friday to Sunday, go.
And you're doing this. You're doing this where you guys are in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Okay, prepping for Casco Bay. Yeah, absolutely. That's the great thing with these is you we've got course maps. You've got an idea of what those are going to look like. If you haven't done it before, you're theoretically should be reaching out and asking the questions like, okay, what is that course like? How much time is spent on trails? How much time is spent on pavement? How much time is spent on dirt roads? If you've listened to any of our course previews that I've done with you guys on the race, you're familiar with the idea of cold water and currents and having to navigate tides and things like that. And so I think it's getting comfortable in that realm. Now, for you guys, you've got amazing terrain to go run in. And as I mentioned, we don't have that in Casco Bay. So you're not going to go need to do your ninja loop or any of those crazy loops that you guys do and crazy elevation. You can stick to something a little bit flatter. And if you look at Casco Bay, it's a pretty good mix of single track trail, a lot of dirt road on these islands, because that's just how we get around out here, and a little bit of pavement. And so that's kind of where your focus is. And it's your body's taking a different beating on that type of terrain, and you're going to be able to run a little bit faster on that type of terrain versus an Orcas or something like that. So you're finding that area where you're going to be able to open it up a little bit. Now, if I'm planning that weekend, it's probably going to start out with an easier run. Let's kind of ease into this. Let's hit the trails, keep the terrain soft a little bit, and maybe finish that up with a swim. Like, let's just kind of get comfortable and maybe push some efforts on that swim on Friday and go with that. From there, where I'm going on Saturday is probably let's hit a little bit of intensity and go through a swim run session. If we can find some currents in the Bay Area to swim in and get pushed around a little bit, I would try to hit up that and then hit some harder efforts, some more threshold type efforts on the dirt roads and a little bit of concrete. Get used to that pounding and opening up the power a little bit and just kind of swim run and going through that. And then, I kind of like the idea of finishing up these camps with just a longer endurance day. And again, this is swim run. So it's not necessarily going for a run and then going for a swim. Put on your swim run gear, you're getting comfortable with transitions as well. We have quite a few of them here in Casco Bay, and some of them are a little tricky. I'd be trying to find those tricky, rocky transition areas where you might be slipping a little bit and sliding a little bit, and obviously a little different type of seaweed here versus there, but, kind of mix yourself up in it a little bit if you can. And just kind of have that long endurance day where you're just practicing being out, getting uncomfortable. Because, Casco Bay, you can open up and go a little faster, but it's still, for some people, 4, 5, 6 hour race. And you just need to be out there. And so I would just get comfortable through those tricky transitions and working through that a little bit. But, you're just trying to maximize your time on that weekend, but also not put yourself in a hole where you're going to need a full week to recover or even get hurt. So it is a balance between putting in the work and getting stuff done, but also, understanding your body and where you are and not pushing yourself too hard in some of those scenarios.
Yeah. I mean, I love being really intentional about practicing swim run, sort of like the art of swim run, the transitions, fiddling with gear, maybe even wear like a race bib so you can, get used to pulling that up and down and cabbing up and down. I know that's one place where I'm super deficient is just cabbing up and down. And I've been ignoring that. I've been ignoring solving that problem just because
it hasn't been
annoying.
A huge issue though, but yeah.
Well, that's why I index for like the VIG or something, but I should be able, at this point, I should just be able to cab down on command without having, any trepidation. And I'm just like trying to avoid it. So, but anyway.
Great point.
I don't know why I turned into, vent session there. But.
No.
Let it out, Chris.
Because you need to work on it. That's why, no, it's the idea of doing the things that aren't easy and the things you don't like to do. You don't like doing them because, and I'm not saying you particularly, Chris, just you don't like doing these things because you're not good at doing them. So let's practice doing them and get more comfortable with practice fueling, practice hydrating. Make sure you're comfortable getting in enough carbs and enough calories in an hour. Make sure you're comfortable carrying soft flasks and food and being able to pull that out and go through transition. And, I would do I've done a couple like training weekends with Lars where we'll end up at some event and we'll train through it. And even if we're doing a course run through, and I'm just laughing because he gives me such a hard time over this, if we're doing like a course run through after we set the course, he's working those transitions, he's going through, and I'm just sitting there, don't worry. No, we're fine. And he gets so mad at me for my slow transitions, but that's something I need to do is practice fast transitions and get through it. And I think one of those days I yelled at him, like, listen, I will swim better if you give me this extra 5 seconds.
I just need the time.
Just give me a minute. But no, I shouldn't have that minute or those 5 seconds. So I think it's that idea of practicing those things you need to work on, and that's the opportunity to improve right there. It's just the little things, and nailing, as we say at Purple Patch, nailing the basics.
Yeah, I mean that's really it's not much of a secret. It's like the fundamentals are there. You just gotta be an expert at them. I really liked how you highlighted the fueling piece, because that is such a huge component of it, of really having a top level understanding for yourself personally what it takes to hit those paces that you're trying to do or achieve the goals or the outcomes that you're looking for. And really working on that stuff. I know that's an area when we did Attila this year, practicing with that soft flask, that was something that Chris and I made sure we were really doing on our longer swimrun adventures or sessions, was like practicing with that soft flask and making sure we're doing the gut
literally like carrying it, because it's so annoying to carry a full
and zipping it up in your suit when it's full. Like, these are annoying things that happen during the race, but you just have to be more used to them.
So
and
annoying.
You got to be comfortable being uncomfortable in those
for sure
scenarios, and where those things come into play. And that's the perfect opportunity to practice that stuff. And the other things too, like we kind of forget about, like sleeves, putting sleeves on, taking sleeves off, and doing that type of stuff for sure. Yeah,
I'm hearing lots of great double session, like some big the volume's there, right? And obviously, to be able to hit multiple days of multiple bigger volume, you need to make sure you're taking care of yourself too. So getting your recovery in, putting your legs up. How much of that is part of these camps that you're putting on at Purple Patch?
Well, I mean, when the Purple Patch too, we're kind of, it's multifaceted. The endurance and the athletic aspect of it is one small portion. You've got, endurance sport, let's go train. But now let's talk about the other things like recovery, nutrition, strength, like all these other components, like swimming and running for swimrun is one part of it. But like you said, there's nutrition in terms of not just, if we're training for a season and you want to do as well as you can, there's race nutrition, there's everyday nutrition. and taking that approach. And so we obviously, we talk a lot about that and how that should be integrated into your life, how sports should be integrated into your life. Where does strength play a role? And as you said, recovery. And recovery can mean a lot of different things. But I think, if you're at a camp or you're at a, having a training weekend like that, the idea is like you want to just squeeze as much in as you can in 2, 3, 4 days. But the idea is like that's not the best bang for your buck. I think it's also practicing those recovery modules in terms of one, rest, active recovery, but also nutrition. And are you getting in the protein after a hard session? Are you getting in the carbohydrates after a hard session, and practicing those little things. But also, if you're going to a coach camp, you're gaining an understanding around that. That's part of the educational aspect of it. I think that's kind of the big difference between a training weekend and a camp is you're going with someone who's going to lead you through this and kind of set it up for you. If we're doing a triathlon camp for Purple Patch, one of the huge components that I'm a big part of is swim analysis. And we're just, okay, let's look at swim stroke. And then, we have Coach Mike, who's a fantastic running coach, and he's doing run analysis. And we're taking a look at that. And then we've got Coach Brad, who's doing, we've got a pH machine, precision hydration sweat test machine, and we're doing sweat testing, and we're helping people understand around electrolytes and, what do you need specifically? So there's that educational component that comes into play, and recovery and nutrition. Those are all part of that education. And I think if you are going into a training weekend with just some friends, you need to keep that in mind and kind of check the ego a little bit and be like, oh, wait, well, you need to do this smart and do it the right way. And part of a big weekend is training. The other part of a big weekend is recovery. So it's great to hang out with your buds, but 12 beers after a hard day before another hard day might not be the best thing in the middle of a training weekend.
12 beers?
12,
yeah,
I'm dead.
Among all of us. I mean, yeah,
what happens at these Purple Patch camps? 12 beers?
Yeah.
It's like Animal House.
Yeah, exactly. Big frat party.
I really like that. I mean, obviously there's a cost associated with these really great camps that Purple Patch has, but I mean, you're really sounding like you're diving deep into multiple facets, and it's not just, oh yeah, we're going to this great location and we're doing swim, bike, run or swim, run or whatever. You're going deep on a lot of different, and getting the chance to have somebody actually look at you and observe what you're doing. I mean, that's what a few times when we were in Sweden, when we were doing some of the Envol stuff with Coach Nico of Envol, having him actually look and watch you do a transition and kind of give you a few pointers here and there. It's like, oh man, the intelligence, you just level up so much faster by having that sort of expert level analysis and opinion there.
Oh, absolutely. To have eyes on you and see what you're doing is just a game changer. I mean, I think that, honestly, if we're looking and spending, and I'll just talk to the Purple Patch camps just because that's what I know. If someone's like, I don't know, should I get a new bike or should I go to a camp? I'm just, go to a camp. Like, you're going to get so much faster and so much better. I wouldn't even say faster, better. Become a better athlete and better all around, triathlete by coming to these because of the upskill. And it's the idea of like, if you're going to a coach camp, the expectation should be, and this is what we have at our camps, is that, you're taken care of the entire time you're there. It's like, we've got SAG vans following you around. I'm on a bike, if people are running and carrying nutrition and water and electrolytes and handing that out and making sure they have it. And, if we're out on a bike course, there's 2 vans driving around with you, coaches on bikes coaching you the entire time,
Wow.
And this is kind of my take on coaching. And this is something that goes back to when I was coaching swimming on the pool deck many, many years ago in Arizona. And I remember the head coach we had on the team was like, every time our swimmers are on the wall, you should be saying 3 things, 1 thing to 3 different people that they can work on as they push off the wall. Because there's always something to work on and something to be had. And there's, as coaches, and I've seen, videos of you guys doing this and seeing Nico there and just like really studying what you guys are doing and what other people are doing and giving those pointers. There's so much to be said about that. And at least, with our camps, it's now let's get you in the pool. Let's get out the video camera. Let's break it down. Let's create some analysis videos. Let's see where you can work on it. We're doing, individual sessions where I'm taking just 2 people out into the open water and we're just practicing different things in different scenarios. Or same thing, we'll grab a couple people, take them on the bike course and just practice bike handling skills. But the upskill that can happen at these camps, if you've got a good coach there taking care of you and leading you through it, is just, it's priceless, to be honest. I think people can gain a lot out of just going and listening to the same way we do, professional development. It's like, I can gain a lot just by going and listening to someone who knows more than me. And the same thing with camps. You're going there to learn from the other coaches, but also from the other athletes. That's what I love, is watching the athletes sit around and just share ideas with each other, bounce it off. And like, same thing, like, I love being on the ferry in Casco Bay and just watching everyone's like sharing ideas and chatting, and, you know, or even race morning in Texas, seeing those videos, everyone just sharing different ideas of, wow, I should try that. We should do that. And so you're just learning. And that's the big thing out of those is yeah, they're fun. Yeah, it's a good time, but it's just so educational, and the upskill that can happen at those is just priceless.
You know, it's funny, like hearing you say that, it reminds me of when I, you know, in a previous life when I was a social justice warrior, I used to go to these lawyer conferences for, you know, people that were fighting the man and suing the government and stuff. And it was so much fun because you essentially were with like-minded people, as you're saying. You already have some familiarity with the subject matter because ostensibly all these folks are already being coached by Purple Patch. So it isn't like you're getting someone from square one, and you can just really kind of get into the weeds of it. It's like, okay, you know, it isn't just like, oh, what's your power meter say? It's like, all right, how much are you losing on the hills versus whatever? And it's, yeah, you know, just to echo your point, it seems like it's really an opportunity to just level up on, not just on, yeah, maybe your fitness for sure, but just your knowledge. I mean, I feel like this show for us has been a huge level up, just being able to chat people up. I mean, our Swimrun IQ is super high, our ability suspect, but IQ is really high, right? And it seems like camps or, you know, a training weekend, if you do it right and you know, you kind of keep it in your pants in terms of like the volume, it's just a great way to just really just level up. And once you've leveled up, I mean, that's it, right? Like you've reached a different stage in your ability to race and your ability to perform. And it just seems like a great way to really get that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it just like, I love that term level up. That's just such a great way to talk about it. I mean, you're going to come out of that a better athlete for sure. And again, you do it the right way, you're coming out of it better.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I love it.
And I think the aspect, especially around the community or the learning, there's a word for that. I'm not whatever you're taking in from everybody else, especially around some like, hey, how does Marcus have his pull buoy set up, and where does he keep his paddles? And there's so much, especially with Swimrun, everyone's still sort of dialing it in and figuring it out. It's like there's a lot to be had there, for sure. On that front. Yeah.
Yeah, no one knows everything. We're always learning and adapting and changing. And you know, as a coach, if the minute you think, if you ever reach a phase where you can't learn anymore, it's time to retire. You're done. Like, it's not because you know it all, because you're done being a coach. It's there's always an opportunity to learn and improve and get better. And it's like, you know, we're always evolving, and particularly the sport of swimrun. Like, yeah, I mean, at this point, it's nice to say, wow, it's been around for a little while, but in the big scheme of things, it's still really young. And there's just so much new technology coming out with different, you know, carbon paddles, different size paddles. And it's like, man, I just tried the you know, Annie Mosbury let me borrow our carbon ones, that are the elongated.
Oh, with the
ones.
fins on the end? Yeah.
Yeah, I did a little time trial on those, and holy shit, that blew my mind a little bit. So it's like,
like,
you know, you're
how are your shoulders? Well, you're already the fastest swim runner in America. So what, were you faster, or was it just like, what is going on?
I mean, I would put my fitness on a scale of like 1 to 10, like 10 being like I'm race ready. I'm probably a 6 right now in terms of swimming. And I did like, you know, let's go do I did a 200 free, like 95%. No equipment. I think I was like 209. And then I put on those paddles and a little buoy, those paddles, size medium paddles, little buoy. And it was my first time using carbon paddles too. So I have a 158, same effort level. So I was like, wow, oh, good. All right. But a topic for another day, maybe. I think the idea of having the strength to maintain that type of power with the carbon that's another story. I was 1-200, but anyway, learning and experimenting and trying all these different things, you know, and you know, it'd be great to do a training camp, be like, oh, can I try the mega keel, please? Like, let's see how that one feels. And like, oh, okay, nope, that's my ass is out of the water. I need to go back to my plus or whatever it may be. But, you know, those opportunities to try things. And, you know, I was a proponent of smaller pool buoys for a while, just because I could be so much faster with them. And then the keel kind of changed that for me, and you're learning and adapting. And, you know, I had the lasso pull buoy set up, and I was like, yes, this isn't working for me. And someone's like, you should try this. And I was like, oh, that actually works for me. Thank you. And it's like just sharing ideas and coming around that. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it's funny to see that on the ferry, but you know, you sit down at a training camp and do the same thing. And actually, I want to say it was summer of 2018. I believe Lars and I put on a camp here in Casco Bay. And that was part of it. It was like, we literally did a roundtable we all kind of sat around. We're like, all right, let's talk about what we set up. Like, what do you guys got? And that was still when most were strapping them to their legs. And it was like, all right, what are you doing? Okay, what are you doing? Like, let's share ideas. Oh, can I try those paddles? Can I try this? And it was just like a collaboration of things. And it was just really fun to see. And we were all learning, which was great.
Yeah.
I think there's an education thing here too. So this is going to be like, if we were writing a book, this would be like the sidebar, because paddles, I mean, you brought it up. You have a whole episode where we're talking to you about swim paddles. So search for that in our archives. We could probably refresh
that one. That one's
we should refresh.
Yeah. So we have a training weekend scenario. We have a pool session on deck, and it's like, hey, we're a bunch of Swimrun guys and trying to figure out what paddles are the appropriate size for us. And we have a couple different sizes, and we're gonna be like, okay, we're going to try to be really smart about this so no one blows out their shoulders, right? Give us how would you sort of take that time to evaluate what's the right paddle size for you?
I think when you're looking at that, you're looking at a couple different things. One, it's, speed, obviously, which one is faster just from a pure time standpoint. But then it's, which one are you going to be able to hold that pace with over time? Like I mentioned, like I can use those bigger carbon paddles and 200. Great. Can I do that for 1,000 and then take a little break and then do that for another 1,000 and then take a little break? I don't know. And so you're looking at that and seeing his form falling apart with the larger paddles. Yeah, you're great the first 200. We're doing maybe 1,000 time trial. And then by the 800, you're like, your arms are barely coming out of the water and your elbows dropping. You're hardly pulling through the water. Everything's kind of slipping. You're like, all right, yeah, that paddle theoretically is faster for you in the short term, but we're talking long term here, and that's not going to work. And so it's looking at where are you able to hold your form together? Is your technique falling apart with a certain paddle? Are you able to keep your stroke rate up? All of those little things come into play on top of speed and performance, but it's sustained power is what you're looking for. Sustained pace and sustained technique, and try different things, and you kind of essentially are trying to bring that up as much as you can, and you'll find that point where you're like, nope, this one's just a little bit too big, and the carbon on that's just too hard for me to kind of hold power with it, and so I'm going to bring it down, or I'm going to switch to non-carbon or whatever it may be. And I think the carbon thing is just such a mind-blowing thing to me, just in the how much power you can put into it, but you're paying a price for it at the end of the day. So you have to be a pretty strong athlete to be able to do that. And so I think there's the idea of even saying, okay, this one looks like it could work for you. It's not right now, but let's train this up a little bit and see. But here are the things you need to think about as you're using this. We tend to find that, once you get 600 into 1,000, we start to see your right arm is starting to fall apart a little bit. So let's just, train that up as best you can, and be conscious of the idea that your form's going to fall apart a little bit with this. But it is a great opportunity to do some testing and see what's going to be best for you.
Yeah, and especially the sort of differences between swimming in a nice, beautiful lap pool versus you're out in the open water. You got some current, and some chop, and some waves and other things to deal with there. I think that's another place to,
absolutely.
To get some learnings.
Yeah, and I think about it all the time, and people talk about it. I was like, we're not triathletes, swim runners. We're not pool swimmers. We're open water swimmers. We use the pool because that's what's easy and that's what's accessible. You guys are spoiled. You've got the bay when you can right there. I'm a little spoiled. I've got Casco Bay if I've got a group of people and I don't want to worry about the man in the gray suit, if you will. But I think there's that idea of you dial it in, you practice it in the pool. That's where you can kind of really dial in on pacing in terms of effort levels. That's where you can say, okay, theoretically, this is the best paddle for me. I'm going to practice with this. Now let's take it to the open water and let's try to implement that. I think, any camp, in my mind, this can be worthwhile. You're going to have a pool opportunity. You're going to have an open water opportunity. It'd be great to have both of those in the same place. So, okay, let's practice this in the pool in a controlled environment. Now let's get out in the wild and let's feel some currents. Let's feel some wind. And in the pool, yeah, maybe the large arc is fantastic for you. That works really well. But then you get on a windy, rough day, you're just getting, the wind's blowing it around. You're getting caught on waves. And it's just like, wow, this isn't actually going to be ideal for me in rough situations. And, we look at the world champs. We've seen some years where that gets pretty gnarly, and maybe a bigger paddle isn't going to be, you're not going to handle it as well there. And so I think it's also being adept to transition between different size paddles depending on the environment. Now we're talking top tier here, but that idea of like which paddle is going to be best in certain environments and certain circumstances.
Great. Another thing to think about.
I'm already, yeah. The juices are flowing for sure. In these camps that you have, what do you feel like is the biggest sort of opportunity for a lot of these athletes that you're coaching? I mean, outside of the sport that they're doing, the swim, bike, run, or the swim run piece? Is it sort of recovery and fueling? Is it race fueling? Is it some strength? Like where do you see people that would be a good area for people if like, okay, hey, obviously we're going to do big run volume, big swim volume, but we should be investing a decent amount of time in X, Y, Z. Like where do you think people have some of the biggest opportunities that you've seen?
I think it's addressing your weaknesses and going into that and being like, where can I improve the most? And maybe that is in swim or bike and run, or maybe that's in recovery, or maybe that's like, hey, I'm not sleeping well. Here's my schedule. You talk to a coach about it and be like, here's my work schedule. Here's my workout schedule. Here's all these things I'm doing. And, we can kind of work around that. But I think address your weakness, and that's the opportunity to do it. And like when we put on a Purple Patch camp, we're going there and you've got, Matt Dixon, who's an expert on everything. You've got, Mike, who's an expert on strength and is an expert on running. You've got Brad, who's great with nutrition and hydration and on the bike. You've got me for swimming. And so we have experts in all of these fields. So it's like, if I have someone that comes in, like, I really want to work on my swim this week. Like, all right, great. You're going to sign up for all these individual sessions. You're going to sign up for this swim analysis, and we're going to address the swim and what your issues are. Or if it's like, I'm really struggling with nutrition. All right, let's come up with a plan. You know what? We've got a long ride on Saturday. Let's put it into practice. Let's see how it goes. Let's push these calories. Let's aim for 80 carbs an hour and see how you feel coming off of that, and start to dial that in and help them practice and get that dialed in. So when they leave, they've got an action plan to continue to improve upon that as they need to.
Quick question. Before the training weekend comes about, is Purple Patch sort of sharing, okay, hey, you guys, here's a little training plan. Make sure you're trained up for the training weekend type thing, or do people just come in cold?
Yeah, no, that's a great, I think we can expand on this a little bit. For us in Purple Patch, we made it months ago. We've got Kona coming up in January. We've got a Napa camp in April and a South Carolina camp in June. And we've already mapped these out. We know what these weeks look like. We know when we're on the bike. We know when we're in the pool, when we're in the open water, who's coaching what sessions, what those sessions are going to be. We definitely go in with a plan of saying, like, this is how it's going to be. Now, also with that, a good number of the athletes that are going to these camps are one-to-one athletes. So they've got us as coaches. And so I can say, all right, I know what this weekend's going to be. And we'll even send that schedule out well ahead of time so people know what to expect. But yeah, you have to go into these camps and be ready. And I think whether you're going to a camp or you're going to a training weekend, it's the idea of understanding, like, you need to prep for this. You need to be ready. You need to prep for it almost like you're prepping for a race. You need to make sure that you are going to be able to handle the volume. You're going to be able to handle some of the intensity if you're doing intensity that type of year. And you need to be prepped and ready to go for that, and almost kind of rest up a little bit coming into it. So you're ready to perform at your best and do what you can do. And then coming off of that, same idea, like you need to recover. It's a hard weekend regardless. So, if you're doing a training weekend with friends or you're doing a camp, you're likely doing a lot of work. And I think you need to plan for a recovery week coming off of that. You need to allow the time for your body to absorb that work and what you've done and come off of that, to really be successful from that. So both ends of it, you really need to be prepped going into these and ready to go. I mean, it's a big event and your body's going to be going through a lot. So you need to be taking care of yourself and getting ready to go ahead of time. And we certainly make sure people are ready. So we don't want to break anyone. We want to improve people.
Yeah. Yeah, you're trying to plus up yourself, not totally dismantle yourself. Is this a camp? I mean, it feels like we're, it's like, are you trying to do everything? Trying to do all the things? Like, are some people like, oh, I'm bringing an elevation tent and like sleeping in this, or are we hitting the sauna and doing all this sort of stuff? Or it's like, I guess it depends what you have at your resources you have available.
That's true. Depends what's available.
Might be a little extra.
That said, I mean, yeah, bring your Normatec boots. Let's try some recovery stuff. But we're not. You don't want to do it all. It's you got to be smart about it and understand what you're trying to get out of it. Yeah, if there's a sauna and there's a spot for that within the training week, yeah, let's get in there and recover a little bit with that, or whatever it may be. It's supposed to be fun and relaxing at the same time, but I think it's going into it the right way and understanding, and that's why we do lay out what we're doing in the camp. There needs to be a framework and an idea of here's what we're doing, here's what you're getting out of it, here's how we're doing it, and here's the approach. And, a training weekend can get off the rails a little bit if you don't have someone who's kind of in charge and ahead of that, and you end up doing too much. But we definitely need to reel people in sometimes on what's going on the bike. And, we'll have a 60-mile ride planned and we'll get in and somebody's like, all right, I want to go out for another 25. Like, no, you're good. you're good. Like, that's not what we're doing right now.
Look at tomorrow. I think you'll be okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
We got enough stuff to do tomorrow. Like,
yeah. The time will come. Let's recover and let's plan on the next session or whatever's coming up next and or is in there. But you do need to go in prepped and just kind of be smart about what you're doing and just making sure you're not overdoing it. So no, it's not like let's go in and do all of the things. Let's go in and just be smart about it. And, that's how you're going to get the most out of it.
Yeah, and you gotta train up to drink those 12 beers.
Yeah,
that I have been training for. Yeah.
I'm good. I got a good level of base fitness for that one. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Man. Well, John, as always, your wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much. I guess the last thing to chat about, which has nothing to do with training weekends, is more of a congratulations on Odyssey becoming Attila USA. Love to get your thoughts on what you think the future holds for the sport.
Well, it's super exciting. I think it just opens up a lot of possibilities. And that's what I'm most excited about is the possibilities now. And they're endless, right? And I think the idea is, we want to race more. We want to do more races, more locations, maybe more training camps, things like that. I think, that partnership is going to be tremendous for the sport. And it's going to help it grow in the US. It's going to help it grow in Europe. And I think that's the idea is we obviously want all of us in this side of the pond, if you will, want to go over and race in Europe, but we want them to come over here too and experience Casco Bay and Orcas Island and Texas and Michigan and get out on, to all these places and see it and any new places that happen to pop up. I think the possibilities are endless. And so this really just kind of opens up those possibilities. And I think we're going to see the sport grow a lot here, which is going to be a lot of fun.
No slip ups there, huh? I was hoping maybe you were going to rattle off another.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Another state, another 2 states that start with the letter C, maybe.
Cool.
Yeah. Well,
we need a swim run camp. I mean, that sounds like a great fun time. So we'll put a good word in for Dixon as well.
Yeah. There we go. Well, we did a swim run camp in Casco Bay, 2018, and. I know Brent Molesbury and I have chatted about some ideas as well. And, we'll make it happen one of these days for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Count us in, of course.
Cool.
Well, John, thanks so much, man. Appreciate you. Thanks for everything.
And if you, no doubt you found all this information valuable. We have, like Chris said, probably 5 to 6 other episodes with Coach John Stevens here. So dig back in the archives and check that out. The paddles one, we're probably due for a spruce up on that one. But that was... If you want to go deep and nerdy on some paddle stuff, that's a great episode.
Do you remember Couch to Casco? I thought that was a good idea.
Was a good one. Yeah, that was a great
years ago. That was good.
The archives are deep these days.
Yeah. I think I am all for a new paddle episode. I think the technology is expanded to the point where I think and then paddle pull buoy combos. There's all kinds of fun stuff we can do.
Well, you know what I think we're gonna do. I mean, we definitely don't need to do this online, but whatever. We're going to send you Frank paddles, so then you can try a couple different ones, and we'll get sort of like, the John Stevens rating on all these.
Oh yeah. We could have like a Scoville scale of some kind, right? Yeah. How spicy
hot
are
ones,
these paddles?
But with carbon fiber paddles.
These episodes just title themselves.
They do. Awesome, John. Well, thanks again for sharing your knowledge with us. And be sure to head on over to Purple Patch fitness.com if any of these camps sound interested in you. Grass Pearls are into triathlons. There's that sort of thing there, but I'm sure they would take you without the bike.
Yeah.
You just have more free time to swim, I guess, or run or do something else.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. All these camps have different focal points too, so we'll find a swim specific one for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks, John, and thanks again.
All right, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a rating or review, since that's the best way to help other people discover the show and the sport of swim run.
Check out our website, lowtideboys.com. That's boys with a Z, for swim run resources, including gear guides, tips, how-to videos, and so much more. Make sure to check out our meme page at The Low Tide Boys on Instagram. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, send us a DM or email us at lowtideboys@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank Riding Easy Records for our show music, and of course our wives for their support and tolerance of our swim run and other activities.
Lots of activities.
Lots of activities.
Finally, you can support our efforts on Patreon. Until next time,
get out there and go for a swim.
Then a run.
And then a swim.
Then another run.
Then another swim.
Then run some more.
Just keep going.
Let's go.
And then stop at some point because,
And fuel. Don't forget to fuel.
Gotta fuel
of course, yes.